Well, welcome everybody to East End Books, Provincetown. We're outside on the Bookstore Condo Association property here, so we're out on nice, cool weather, not cold but cool. Definitely better than the hottest day of the year earlier this week. You can see the beautiful ocean backdrop and the new waterfront public park. We expect hopefully sometime this summer to be out there, but we're still outside here, so it's quite nice, and we're excited. The park is just gorgeous out there. And for people, little, I guess, insider tip for people visiting Provincetown, this is one of the fancy European bathroom out there, and it's one of the few public bathrooms on the East End. So the library and the Cam Art Museum are the only other two. So I know when I'm traveling, I'm wanting to know where are the bathrooms. That is one of them. I just need to know that. So we're very excited to have Tess Callahan back. Paperback edition of her book is out. Her beautiful book, Dawnland. We still have a few. I managed to get a few copies back in hardback as well for people that prefer that, like myself, that prefer the hardback. And so we're just very glad to have her back. Her last book, April and Oliver, is just absolutely wonderful. I think we had some copies in the store here in Boston. If you haven't read that, you should definitely pick that up as well. And for people that are new to Tess, once you read this book, you're going to want to read the previous. And I think you're going to love David's book as well. Absolutely love it. David Hicks. And I see that I am now out here without my cheat sheet. I am. So the good thing is that in a moment they'll be conversing together. So I'm going to ask ask them to give the shortened version of their bio of each other, or of themselves if they don't even want to do that. But I have a full bio, a really great bio, the extensive bio, both of them on our website, on the event page that's on there, so you can see that. And I know that one of David's co-workers, colleagues is here.
Yes.
And where is
Wilkes University. I'm the director of creative writing. One of our star students is right there.
Wonderful. Fantastic. And Tess, I guess, so we're trying to remember because time flies. I think Tess was reminding me, it's like, was it last year that when he unfortunately got food poisoning, not here, and we had to cancel the event, unfortunately. So it's wonderful to be able to do this again. And actually, last summer, this was all under construction. So, this would not have been a good backdrop, high mounds of cement and dirt and everything. So we were all around Provincetown last summer at different venues. So now, even though we're not quite out there yet, it's beautiful and pleasant to look at and good weather and everything else. So people know that watch the recording afterwards, the recording of this, that we do get, and they will sign all the extra store copies for regular signatures. So we'll have signed copies available. If you're on the website and buying the book and you want a signed copy, just say that in the memo section. And if you come on at any point on the live stream, if you order the book, I'd say like 10 minutes before this ends, we get an email right away. And if you want a personalized copy, this is only if you want a personalized copy to Jeff, Sally, Sue, say that in the memo, and I'll check the emails before they leave, and we'll get the personalized copy. Otherwise, there will be a signed copy, and that's what we'll send out. And then I'll find out from them later. A lot of authors have signed book plates available they can send later on once we're out of the original signed copies. So if that's available, we'll be getting those, and we'll have those as well. So just a couple quick announcements. The next few events coming up on Saturday. We have Mark Mushton coming in from Florida with his fantastic new book, Boy with Wings. He's a best-selling author and the founder of Words by South Music and Book Festival in Tallahassee, where I'm from, the capital of Florida. So very interesting person, really good book. So if you're around, that's Saturday. All these are at 6 o'clock. Rounding out Pride Month, on the 29th, that's Sunday, right? Sunday the 29th, we have a phenomenal professor, Stephanie Burt from Harvard, with coming and talking about new book out, Super Gay Poems, which is in the store in both stores, plus our store in Boston, the Seaport, and this one here as well. And then some of you, I think some of the, I don't know if there are any tonight other than me. It could be queers in the crowd of a certain age, like mine, might recall Phil Gambone, who is Philip Gambone, who is wrote for many publications, Queer, Christopher Street and others, was one of the earliest earliest queer authors to be published by mainstream presses, who still is writing for like Harvard Gay and Lesbian Review and others. Great guy. He has a new short story collection out called Zigzag, and we will have him on July 2nd. So he's an amazing person. We finally got him coming over here and do an event, so we're very excited about that. And then, and I've got more books coming because it's selling like hotcakes. On July 3rd, the very next night, we have Phil Mellison, who will, a couple days before that, be flying in from London with his phenomenal new book, Florenzer, which is historical fiction, and it's looking at Leonardo da Vinci and his contemporary crowds of kind of the gay painters, artist crowds, and their patrons, the Medicis and others, and also not just gay, straight, but kind of that whole crowd back there. And there's murder and intrigue and everything else, and this book is like just flying off the shelves. It's amazing because I haven't seen a lot out about it, but the book is really great. And so he'll be in conversation with Greg Salvatore, who's a phenomenal painter and photographer who's got a gallery near us on the East End. So that's July 3rd. All the rest of the many, many events this summer are on our website. People had asked me, are there any other events coming up this summer, like local or in the Cape authors? And there are two that you might be familiar, well, one for sure is Karen Dukas, who's Welcome to Murder Week is phenomenal. Out, and we had her with her last book, which we're going to get an update on the movie status for her last book, which is set in Wellfleet. And then we have Judith Newcomb Stiles, who is a phenomenal artist in Wellfleet, a potter, and whose family is like Newcomb Beach, the Newcombs, kind of Wellfleet royalty, who has a new novel out called Hush Little Fire, her very first book, and you can't put it down. And it's like, and I asked her, I was like, she's gonna tell us some more when she comes, like how many, it's fiction, right? But how many people might recognize themselves in Wellfleet? And she's like, I might be run out of town. And it's like, but, and it's just phenomenal. And she lands it, her first book, Penguin Random House, the biggest in the world. So that's pretty impressive. She's super nice. And if you're in Wellfleet, go to her art studio and check out her art. So anyway, that's all going to, all the other stuff's on the website. We look forward to seeing you there. And I should mention, I mentioned off before this started, we're transitioning our videos for our 10 plus years of events where we have been live streaming those events onto our YouTube channel. It's on there, the YouTube channel. We haven't finessed it yet, everything, but a lot of the videos are on there. Facebook is moving to only allowing the videos to be on for 30 days and then delete them. And we've been moving towards YouTube anyway, because not everybody's on Facebook, and you don't need to belong to see YouTube. So that's going to be on there. And if you go on there right now, people have been asking about, like, yes, our event from 2022 with Jenny Slate and Julia Glass and Ben Shattuck is on there, and Doris Kearns Goodwin, stuff like that. So you'll see it all on there. And within 1 or 2 days, this wonderful event with these two fantastic people will be on there as well. I have to say, and I said this about Tessa's book in the hardback edition, and I can say that authoritatively about David's book. I really feel like these, well, I can say because I own the stores, these will be always be in my bookstores here in Boston, and Provincetown in Boston, and so they're that good, and I'm really excited about that. And anyway, without further ado, I hand you over to these two wonderful people. Thank you. And this, of course, was my Vanna White, and this is Tess's very handsome husband.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thanks you guys for coming. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, because we're outside, and the speaker could, the toilet could be a bit loud, is just to speak up. Thank you.
So I think we're both going to read a little bit and then chat with each other, take questions if there are any. We're going to read around 10 to 15 minutes each, and then talk to each other. My book is The Gospel According to Danny. It's about Danny Gospel, who was a waiter in Yonkers, New York, from a working class family. He marries an aspiring academic named Leah, hoping to get the American dream, hoping to work really hard as a waiter and make enough money to support his wife. And then now he's got a daughter at this point. And this finds him at home for a big summer dinner in Yonkers with his Puerto Rican mom, his uptight Anglo dad, and his brother Miguel, who's called Miggy, who's back from Afghanistan. Miggy's in the army. This is 2003, in case you remember what happened then. And his sister's in the room, Josie, Josefina, it's called Josie, his aunts and cousins. But this is, Miggy's come home, and he's got this kind of awkward announcement. And then I'm going to read that scene, and then the scene after, which takes place on the beach from Danny's point of view. So this is the Gospel According to Danny in the middle. And Leah, Danny's wife, is just finding, Miggy has surprised them all on leave from the army. He surprised them all and kind of jumped into this dinner, and Leah's just noticed him. Leah says, "Why didn't you tell us you were coming? How long are you home for?" "Not sure," Miggy said, blushing as Leah kissed his cheek. "Wow, look at you." Leah smiled with her mouth open, playfully tossing her hair, and Danny realized that to his brother, Leah must have seemed much more curvaceous than the last time he'd seen her. She hadn't lost all the weight she had gained while pregnant with Cassandra, and now she was eating for two again. "Look at me," she said to Miggy. "Look at you. My God, the muscle." Leah felt Miggy's shoulders and pinched both his cheeks. "And what do you mean you're not sure? Of course you're sure. The army doesn't just say, 'See you whenever, take your time coming back,' right?" Miggy smiled and looked at the ground. "Well, to be honest, they probably wish I'd stayed away." Then he looked up, blushing, as if alarmed everyone had heard. "Why?" Danny said. Now the whole table was quiet, waiting for Miggy to explain. "Well, they're trying to figure out if I violated... Justin sent me an email." He looked helplessly at Danny. "Ah," Danny said. "Hey, it's okay, Migs." He looked at Leah, then watched his brother exhale and address the table. "So I wanted to tell you all. That's why I came. Me and Justin," Miggy said, "we're not..." And as he tried to continue, he swallowed, curled his shoulders, and folded his arms. There was no space whatsoever, Danny noticed, between the material of his shirt sleeves and the flesh of his arms. "Hey, we love you, Migs," Leah said. "And Justin." He tilted his head down toward her shoulders, but at the same time kept his arms crossed. Whatever he had experienced in Afghanistan, Danny thought, must pale in comparison to telling your family something they didn't want to hear. "You and Justin," Aunt Marilyn said hopefully, "not friends anymore?" Miggy gave Danny his SOS look, so Danny put down the fork. "They're not just friends," he said, trying to tell everyone with his eyes to be nice and give his little brother a break. "They're more than friends." "What the hell?" his father said. "It's an Independence Day to remember," Javi said in his game show host voice. He winked at Miggy as if he were in on the surprise. "It's Labor Day, you idiot," said Grandma. "Actually, it's August 29th, dear," said Aunt Marilyn. "What?" Josie was staring at Miggy. "The hell?" Danny's father shook his finger. "Not funny, young man." Miggy nodded, his lips still pursed, as if the announcement had been one thing in theory, another thing in practice. "I didn't say it was funny," he said. Danny smiled grimly at Leah, who was rubbing Miggy's back. "Why didn't you tell me, Mig?" Danny said. "Love is in the air, people," Javi said. "Anyone else? Grandma, how about you? Any hot dates? I think I saw your profile in eHarmony." Danny saw Miggy half smile. He and Javi had always been like brothers, ever since they shared a room when they were little. When Javi's father had left them and Tia Rosa couldn't afford to pay rent anymore, but the smile departed when Danny's father stood up. Young man, you were in the army. But then Grandma clattered her knife onto her plate and wiped the corners of her lips. Her pink lipstick matched the pink and gray tracksuit she usually wore, but clashed with the rust-colored dress she had put on after hearing her favorite grandchild had come home. Danny worried about what was to come out of those obscenely pink lips. Bad enough he's got a spick name, but now he's a fruit too? Sit down and shut up, Roger, she said to Danny's father. Miggy's a good boy. Reminds me of your father. She turned to Miggy. He was too sensitive for the military too. Better they discharge you. Might save your damn life with all this stupid bombing over non-existent WMDs by that candy-ass ball of goof sitting in the Oval Office. Geez, Mig, Danny's father said, his face reddening. What about that girl? Josie groaned and looked knowingly at Danny. Rebecca was the nice girl Miggy had dated a few times in high school. It was obvious he just wasn't that into her, but she, poor thing, had fallen head over heels for the mixter. The last time their father had asked Miggy about Rebecca at a family dinner, Josie had said, Jesus, Dad, if you like the girl that much, why don't you date her? And that had shut him up. Danny's mother came in from the kitchen, her hands on her hips. Latia rose beside her, her arms folded, and tisk-tisking her head. How could you do this to me? She said to Josie. Josie had just admitted she's having an affair. And Danny guessed she didn't mean have an affair as much as make it public. Then to Miggy, both of you, it's a sin. These are sins. Everything we do is a sin, Danny said, still addressing his mother, who appeared to be choking on her own outrage. It's a sin you yelled at your mother on the phone last week. It's a sin you covet Mrs. Goodkin's mink coat, which is fake, by the way. It's a sin you steal silverware from every restaurant we go to. It's a sin when you say Jesu Cristo when you burn something on the stove. And it's a sin when you approve of killing all those innocent people in Afghanistan and Iraq. And it's definitely a sin that you and Rosa were both pregnant before you were even close to being married. Because I guess it would have been an even worse sin to get an abortion. He shot Josie an apologetic look. There are so many sins, it's easy to get caught between one sin and another. He glanced at Miggy. And it's impossible. You! His mother yelled, pointing the wooden spoon at Danny as if looking through the sight of a rifle. You are not to talk, young man. You! Javi told me. Stealing money from the restaurant. One of the commandments. Oh, for crying out loud, put a lid on it. Danny's father stood, gripping his bottle of Budweiser. We got a crisis on our hands, and all you can talk about is some goddamn maldita sea, watch your language in my house, cabron. Then nobody breathed. Danny braced for the counterattack, remembering when his father had, at this same dining room table, from the same position, struck his mother, the sound of the harsh slap lingering in the silence that followed. It had turned one side of her face instantly red, with a small welt from his wedding ring. It was the only time he had seen fear in his mother's eyes. But not this time. His father collapsed back into the seat and looked at Danny, stun-gunned. So he does know a little Spanish, he thought. Danny slid back his chair and stood up. Mamacita, he said calmly, his hands out. He was about to tell her how fucked up the Ten Commandments were, how much they pretty much outlawed every normal human inclination, but his mother wheeled on him. You and your lies, her voice turned mocking. Your happy face, your sweet personality, everybody loves Danny. She raised her hands. Who the hell are you, mijo? Danny felt an elemental hatred rising to his throat. He glanced over at Leah, who was taking Cassandra out of the high chair. She raised her eyebrows at him, but whether she meant, wow, mommy's gone cray-cray, or yeah, I have the same question, Danny, who are you? He had no idea. I think you're barking up the wrong tree there, Daisy, said Grandma. Miggy folded his napkin, put it on the table, and stood up. I don't know what I was thinking, he said. He kissed Cassie's head, clutched Leah's hand, and stepped away from the table, but Danny, feeling a vague anger, arrested him by the wrist. So let me get this straight. You told Javi, but you wouldn't tell me? Miggy leveled his gaze. Come on, man, he said. You always knew. He pulled his arm out of Danny's grip and walked out the front door, his broad shoulders slumped. Danny turned to Leah, but she was staring at the door, eyes welled up, with Cassandra in her arms. That's not, she said quietly, what he needed from his big brother just then. Danny felt his anger leap. He's my brother, butt out. But then sat back, his heart racing. He studied the stained and cracked wood of the dining room floor. Ambushed, Danny's father said. while rubbing his forehead. "We've been ambushed." "Just like the gooks," Uncle Frank said with his mouth full. He'd been stuffing his face during the entire conversation, his head down. Grandma was poking at a twice-baked potato with her fork. "Should have used real cheese instead of this Cheese Whiz crap," she said. "Just saying." "Aye," said Danny's mother. They all heard, the sound of Miggy's car, or rather Justin's car, start up and pull away. Next chapter, a few months later. Sherwood Island. Enjoy the show. Thanks for coming. It's a 2-page chapter. Sherwood Island, a quiet beach, especially on a weekday. Seagulls, lapping water, faint music. Nothing like Jones Beach, their planned destination, but there was still the ocean, really the Long Island Sound, the sand under all the pebbles and shells, and it was closer, 40 minutes versus an hour 45, and safer. You think differently when you have a child. It had been Danny's idea, but still, the prospect of spending the day at the beach always triggered in him simultaneously an outward joy and an inward atavistic reckoning. He yearned for the ocean on both an unconscious and cellular level. His mother's side of the family was surrounded by the sea, not only in Puerto Rico, but farther back from Valencia, Spain, and the North African coast. Here at Sherwood, the Atlantic harmlessly settled into the Sound. Nothing scary about it, and Danny felt instantly calmed by the presence of the sea. Home. But he also found himself looking out, way out, trying to determine that potential for the rogue wave, the quake-triggering tsunami that would come without warning and kill everyone within 5 miles of the shoreline. What if today's the day? He couldn't possibly transport his wife and daughter to higher ground in time. Around here, there was no higher ground. He thought of Miggy way out there beyond the opposite shores of this ocean. Would the inevitable apocalypse come in a frenzied fury by way of the war to end all wars, this time for reals? Or in a nightmarish convoy of natural disasters? Or had it already crept in and would continue to creep, completely human-caused, our freshwater drained, the atmosphere in irreversible disrepair, the earth either baked of its nutrients or on fire, our food and water poisoned, the forests scalped of their oxygen-providing trees. Leah had given him Al Gore's book a while back, and he had recently made the mistake of reading it. Now his wife and daughter were staring at him expectantly, so he put the bag down and held up the beach umbrella. Time to do his job. As Leah bent over, her black and white bathing suit tight around her pooched abdomen, to pull out the blanket and Cassandra's sun hat, Danny put up the umbrella the way his gran tio Horatio had taught him in Culebra, in imitation of the soldiers planting the flag at Iwo Jima, rotating it hard into the sand. Then he used his feet to push sand around the base of the pole, while Leah spread sunblock on their daughter's shoulders as she tried to squirm away toward the shore. This is life, he thought, right here. You never know what's coming, but you have to live as if it's not going to come at you. Yes, a tsunami could very well be in the offing. Yes, a nuclear bomb could drop on Manhattan, but the odds were infinitesimal in both cases. You had to scrape that image from your mind and instead drop down on the pebbly sand to help your daughter make a castle that would end up looking like a giant wart. That was the answer. The answer was to acknowledge your brother was back in Iraq because the army had decided a sharpshooter who might be gay was better than no sharpshooter at all. To acknowledge your wife could miscarry the child in her womb as she had the first, and to recognize that at any moment you could die suddenly of a heart attack, or a terrorist attack, or cancer attack, or your wife could die in childbirth, or your 2-year-old daughter could die in her sleep, but still get up in the middle of making the castle. Give your wife a kiss while she's on the phone. Tell her how sexy she looks, even though at that very moment she may have been texting her friend, Terrence, and go back and stand vigil over your daughter, letting your shadow protect her from the sun before dropping back down and helping her with her next project, which was to bury her toy dinosaurs deep into the earth in an apparent replication of the last great species extinction. Then, gently, tell her to close her eyes as you use her red bucket to pour seawater over her head. Let me rinse the sand from your hair, darling. And lean in close to note the single drop lingering on her eyelashes and a smile beginning to form on her lips. Thank you.
Thank you, David. What a pleasure to read with someone, and what a
Same here.
gorgeous chapter from a gorgeous book. And
Thank you.
I just want to say, like that family scene, you know, David makes it look seamless, but how hard, your fellow writer, how hard it is
So
to
many
do
people.
like a scene with a big stage of people and just have it flow like that. So, hats off.
Thanks. Thanks. You've got some of those yourself.
I have,
in the
yes.
house, yeah.
So Dawnland is a family drama set here in Cape Cod. It's a kind of love story. It's really an exploration of how we get unstuck or don't get unstuck from habitual patterns that we fall into in our lives. This scene that I'm going to read is about two of the teenagers in the family who have just about had it with this family vacation that is going to hell, and they've decided to run away. And so it's Phoebe and Lachlan. They're 15 years old. They're cousins, and they are stealing a family member's boat, a small skiff, and they're going out in the bay. And I'm reading from a paper because I'm dropping a few lines that will give things away. So here we are. Phoebe is cold. Quiet as cat burglars, she and Lachlan slink through tall grass along the house so as not to be heard on the gravel driveway. From the dock, they climb into a small boat, lie flat on the bottom, and pull a tarp over them. The ping of raindrops punctuates their breath. My dad's worried by now. She shivers. Maybe we should have left a note. Go back if you want, Lachlan says. The boat lifts and lowers, rhythmically clanking against the dock. It's dark beneath the tarp, but she makes out the shape of his face. We'd better launch before they think to look here, he says. The wood of the skiff is hard against her hips and shoulders, the heat of their bodies warming the enclosed space. Phoebe throws off the tarp, pinpoints of rain assaulting her face, and reaches for the outboard motor. Whoa, you can't start her here, he says. They'll hear us. She unties ropes from the docks and pushes with the oar, freeing them from the dock. They struggle to scull the boat over incoming chop. Her clothes are heavy, her skin electric with brisk salt air. When they've gone a short distance from the shore, she tilts the outboard motor into the water. The bay is rough and edgeless, smudging the contours of land. Locke pulls the cord. Damn thing won't catch. Maybe because you didn't attach the fuel line, Einstein. She connects the hose as the boat pitches and pulls the cord until the flywheel roars. Soon they're in a molten abyss with nothing to guide them. They blast through combers before reaching open water. The swell's deeper than they appeared from the shore, the dinghy climbing and dipping. Lachlan's eyes water in the bracing wind, his profile a knife against the sky. The swells steepen as the boat falters, the engine spitting out water. Towers of clouds over the horizon appear prehistoric, as if she and Lachlan have passed through a portal of time, the only two humans in existence. His chin quivers, his hand a fist on the throttle. A wave hits them starboard, nearly pitching them overboard. Locke, point her into the crests. The engine sputters and he goes full throttle before it can stall. The boat rockets up a mountainous swell and soars airborne over the crest. Her stomach drops. They smack into the trough. The impact knocks him off the bench, his head hitting the sideboard. She grabs the tiller and decelerates. Water sloshes at their feet. They mount the next swell and slope down into the furrow. You okay? She asks. He sits up, holding the side of the boat. Ahead, the clouds have broken. An enormous cumulus in the shape of an anvil cleaves the horizon, lit by an invisible moon. Under the vaporous shelf, slanted striations bucket into the sea. If they turn back, the swells might capsize them. If they venture forward, they might enter the curtain of rain. But the question is pointless. They have no sense of north or south, land or open ocean. The boat stammers. Did you check the gas? She asks. Make sure the oars are locked. A lot of good they'll do, he says. What about life jackets? Look inside the bunk. He yanks the cord on the drum and restarts the motor. Lachlan, vests! He pulls a life vest out and slips it on her. You too, she says. You shouldn't have come, he says. I told you not to come. Put on the stupid vest, she says. The water is up to their ankles. Ribbons of fog scur the chevrons. In minutes they're enveloped by mist. Even the bow of the skiff is hazy. It doesn't matter, he says, his voice cracked with cold. I'm never going back. Shut up, we're going to sink, she says. She thrusts the life jacket at him, letting go of the till long enough for the boat to lob sideways. She rights it, one hand gripping the till and the other Lachlan's hand. They seesaw over wave after wave. She struggles to find the best angle. Head on is too violent. Sideways kills them over. She aims for 45 degrees, but the waves are erratic, the trajectory shifting. She tries not to blink, eyes pinned on each curtain of water until she can no longer remember why they are here or where they came from, everything erased by the volley of waves. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the swells space apart. The rain must have stopped some time ago because the sky is starlit. His hand in hers is a mutual death grip, but he's looking up, mouth open. She sees it then, a shooting star, and another. They watch until the swells level off, the boat hardly pitching. She isn't sure if they've been gone for minutes or hours. She wonders how long a small outboard motor can go on a tank of fuel. She pulls the kill switch. The idle sputters and dies. We should save gas till we figure out where we're going, she says. Look, he points skyward. There's another one. Overhead, a sizzle fades. He puts his life preserver behind his head and settles back against the thwart, staring up. She stays upright, scanning for rogue waves. But the boat sways gently, the Milky Way teeming above. Wow, he says, his voice deeper than normal, calmer, the voice he might have as an adult. The only sound is water lapping the sound of the boat, the side of the boat, the world too quiet to talk. What was that? He sits up. What? She says. I heard something. She looks around like what? A sort of drum beat, super slow. The bell buoy? No, not a clang, a thump, like a bass, once every 10 seconds or so. She listens. Her father says the Milky Way is a symphony, and if you focus on one star, you might hear its vibration. Pull up the motor, Lachlan says. What? Lift the blade just in case. She lifts the motor up and sits beside him, hearing nothing but the lap of water against the hull. Without warning, a burst fractures the silence, louder than steam lifting the lid off a boiled-over pot. They clutch each other, skin dampened with spray, the smell of rotting fish stinging their nostrils. Holy shit, he says. He lets go of her, turns on his phone light, and holds it out in the frail circle of light. A dark mound rises from the water. Phoebe, he whispers. Phoebe, Phoebe. He takes an oar and sculls toward it. What are you doing? She says. Her breath sticks high in her chest. What is it? It's logging, he says. I think that was the heartbeat. A blast of air rockets out of the water, a manhole explosion, spray wetting their faces, followed by a mighty insuck of air. Hurry, she says, let's get out of here. There must be a better flashlight somewhere. He opens the bench, rifles around. I want to see it. He finds a light and shines it directly down. Beneath the surface is an endless canvas of speckled blue, too big to be a single thing. Her mind clamors to make sense of the mottled shapes lifting toward the surface. The water breaks, two dark holes blasting out and suctioning in. She gasps. Shh, he says. It's a blue, Phoebe. People go their whole lives without seeing one, and it's right here. Listen to the pulse. Do you know how big their hearts are? You and me, we could fit in there together. In the distance, a splash. If that was the tail, he says, it's 100 feet long. We're too close, she says. Row back. I want to touch it, he says. He hinges over the side of the boat. Paddle me closer. No, what if it's sleeping? Phoebe, please. Lachlan extends his arms. She puts the oar in the water. Don't reach too far. Get me closer, he says. She nudges the paddle, heart pounding in her ears. She hears it now. The slow drum from the ocean, a deep, resonant throb vibrating through her body, thumping her bones. The boat lifts, and she leans back to compensate for his weight draped over the other side. She sees it as if in slow motion, Lachlan stretching across the bow, first to his waist, his hips, reaching his hand down, feet lifting as he loses his balance. The worn soles of his sneakers flash against the star-washed sky. With a subdued splash, he's gone. The boat seesaws. The submerged glow of the flashlight sinks and dies out. She waits for him to surface, holding in her scream. She wants to kill him. Everything goes still. Movement stirs the water, rotating Phoebe in a slow vortex. She bends over the side, her vision a frantic scramble. He can't be far. Opaque blackness gives way to a sheath of dappled gray, translucent as a human iris. A delicate interlacement of fibers. A terrifying quiet fills her ears, hushed ripples slapping the hull as the boat sluices through swells on its own, swiveling. The whirlpool slows and a circle of water flattens around her. Something beyond her imagination is about to happen. The water breaks with a behemoth exhalation followed by a whistling suction of air. A dark island twice her height rises up, lifting, curling, a living wheel, revolving, topped with an improbably small dorsal fin. It turns counterclockwise, an endless length of speckled steel blue, revealing itself a few meters at a time until the towering obelisk comes free of the water, lifting skyward, and sinks vertically into the sea. Tail flukes twice as long as the boat vanish without a splash. She doesn't know how long she has ceased breathing when her breath comes out as a scream, his name over and over. She didn't know she could yell so loud. When there is no response, she pitches herself overboard, blistering cold. Underwater, she sees nothing but dense murkiness, salt blazing her eyes. She scrambles back into the boat, nearly capsizing. The pause between each drumbeat lengthens, growing faint. From the opposite direction comes a wild splashing. How could Locke have gotten so far? She starts the motor, races towards it. A swish of luminescence flashes in front of the skiff. A neon form slicing through swells, rapid and agile, trailing a phosphorescent wake. She cuts the engine. It's Lachlan's size, streamlined, moving impossibly fast, aglow with the color of his eyes. A ghost. The luminous blur surfaces and sinks out of sight. Only a dolphin. She should not have moved the boat. She looks back, but the listing motion makes it impossible to tell which direction she came from. A shroud of fog approaches. She needs a way for him to find her. She ransacks the thwart, teeth clacking, and finds an orange revolver, a flare. He'll have to be looking her way to see it. With shaking hands, Phoebe points to the sky and pulls the trigger.
I had the same reaction.
Come on.
I said it's,
Next chapter.
Don't leave us there.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just will ask one question each, maybe.
One question each, yes.
I was just talking to Dwight last night about whales being here.
Yeah.
Because you're so far out, right on the Cape, stick so far out in the ocean that the water's very deep, and you could have whales come right by the houseboat, even, which is remarkable. But I wondered, because when I read this book, I thought, well, that seems a little too close. But now I understand that indeed it could happen. But I wanted to ask you, you spend the entire book, Tessa's entire book, just really worried about everyone. Like you're just like, oh no, like every character except maybe the husband or maybe Al. We don't really, but even then he's then we're really worried about Al. The one guy we're not worried about, we don't really like. Really in bad shape. But I wanted to ask you about that because when I read, I really like to worry about the main characters, and you do that so well with not just one, but like 8, like at least 6, especially the kids. And just so you know, when we meet Lockie, we meet the son, his mother is pissed at him, just saying, and even saying like, I wish you would die. Like, just like, he's so obnoxious and so surly that, then Tess is just setting us up, of course, but, and then of course we just think, oh no, like, where's my boy? This kind of angst, this maternal angst over her son. So I want to just ask you about that process. If you're writing each character as you go, complicating them, creating all this tension, because there's tension among the 2 couples. They're both married to people who are not quite fit, and yet April and Oliver seem destined for each other in a way. There's tension among the kids, there's tension between the parents and kids. I just wanted to ask you do you plan that out? Do you do that as you go? Do you go back during revision to make it more complicated?
Lots of revision,
Yeah.
lots and lots
Because
of
we're talking
revision.
to several writers here.
Yes. I do like to look at the arc of each character individually, even as I'm looking at the arc of the whole story, so that that's just more interesting for me that way as a writer. Not that everyone transforms, but that everyone maybe has the opportunity to change and does or doesn't. And then the weaving together of those is what's really interesting to me, as opposed to having one main character with a supporting cast. It can get tricky.
Yeah, you're juggling balls there, and you catch them all at the end. But really, every one of them has their own opportunity for a kind of evolution or change, and either skips it or takes it, and they all affect one another. You do that really well, and that was a beautiful scene. That's
Thank
a
you.
great scene.
Thank you. Well, one of the things I really admire about The Gospel According to Danny and White Plains as well, your first book, is the depth of characterization and the transformation of the characters, and the complexity in the sense that there are betrayals, but there are no villains per se.
Right.
That even the characters we really don't like, we inadvertently start sympathizing with because they're so humanely drawn. So I wanted to ask you how you approach that, if that's a conscious thing.
Yeah, very much so. I don't like. It's kind of fun to see a movie or read a book where there's a good person and a bad person, but I don't really like reading too many of those books. Like, because ultimately, if it's a finger pointing book and you have an agenda, then it sort of comes back at you, right? And we don't really like perfect people. We like kind of people who make mistakes, and we sympathize with that. That's how we fall in love with each other. We don't fall in love with each other because the other person's perfect. We fall in love with each other because their flaws and messiness, and we think we can help. But I do, in this book, Leah has an affair. It's at first just a kiss on 9/11 with the professor she's with, and they're in, the ashes are all over. It's a very dramatic scene, and she admits to it. But then it turns out that the other guy is really the love of her life, and I wanted to kind of portray her as, someone who just married the wrong person. Like, there was a love in her life, and she didn't have the confidence to go for it because he was already married. So she kind of took Danny at the right time, right guy in the right place. And so it was interesting for me to write from Danny's point of view as someone who's not exactly been wronged. I mean, he's wronged, but Leah's got her own story going on. And if you saw it from Leah's point of view, it would actually be kind of romantic in a way. So I want my characters to maybe lash out, but then look inward, and because that's the story of my life, right? To kind of go inward and maybe grow from there instead of, you know, blaming someone else or the author kind of showing that the other person's at fault or the villain. I just don't think there are too many villains. There, you know, there are a few right now. But I'm not really interested in that simple dynamic. Yeah. Do you guys have any comments or questions about anything you read?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'd love to hear from both of you what your inspiration for the novels that you wrote were. Where did the idea come to you? Was it a little glimmer of character, a situation? And so what that germ was that ultimately has grown into these both big, beautiful works.
For me, it starts with character, and then story comes out of character. And so central to both my books is the character of April. And she's inspired, I'd say, by my own questions and a little bit of a combination of people I've known in my life, including a childhood friend who is just an amazing person in my life, extraordinary imagination and sense of adventure, who opened my mind. And because we were kids, I didn't realize like how hard her life was, how dysfunctional her family was, and she went on to have a really tough young adulthood and made it out through the other side. But it just seemed so like I had so many unsolved questions about the unfairness of that and how circumstances form a person and how we can overcome them or not. So I'd say character for me and questions. I'm pursuing questions. If I knew the answer is, I wouldn't be writing the novel. Thank you for the question.
I'm interested in times in my own life where things shift for me, like things have changed. But in this case, in this book, I was inspired by what's gone wrong with our country. And even at the time in 2000, when right after the Columbine massacre and then the Bush Gore election, it seemed really the country shifted. We became a lot uglier and a lot more contentious. And then, you know, school shootings from there after Columbine, and I mean, the Tea Party kind of crazies came out of the woodwork, and that was considered a phase, but that's turned into MAGA, and the economy, the disparity between rich and poor has just gotten worse and worse. It's one of the tensions of this book is that Danny thinks he can work really hard and make money, but he's living in a different America than his father might have. And his father and mother are both high school grads. They're both working class. There's just no way out. He's not going to make it. He's not going to make enough money because you can't make enough. You can't get minimum wage in this country and make enough to live. You can't even pay rent. So I wanted to convey that change in our country, the division that happened. It happened centuries before that, but the Bush Gore election really kind of, you know, when the governor of the state decides an election, and then the Supreme Court decides an election, and everybody's split and angry, and then we've just gotten angrier and angrier. I wanted to write about how one character is affected by that in his personal life and politically, how he just gets beaten down by this division in his own life and in politics. And so I just created a kind of everyman that, based on me, because I've been a waiter and I grew up son of an immigrant, working class, you know, that kind of thing. But more of a kind of not too symbolic, like I didn't want it to be an allegory, but I did want to show one person struggle to make do in the face of all this stuff. It takes place from 2000 to 2015. It ends with the Trump nomination, so 2000 to 2015. So during that time, how he's just kind of beaten down by this difficulty. So it was more like it's the first time I've ever written something that started with a political agenda, but I soon realized that it doesn't work. Like, nobody wants to read that, you know. Nobody wants to read an American political epic by David Hicks. You know, no one's waiting for that book. So I had to embody it in a person that I knew well.
In writing that book, was it hard for you to not just do this really depressing book?
Yes,
Were you able to somehow get some hope? As a reader, you don't want to be mired in depression.
No, I know.
And was that a challenge?
It was, but I kind of naturally have a sort of sense of humor when I write, and there's
it's
humor
very
and
funny.
love. There's some actually funny scenes, I think,
Yes.
but also there's always love. Like there's always light. Like I can't write something that's all dark because I wouldn't want to read it. There's always light, even in the darkest stuff. I mean, I wrote a children's story about my sister's death, and that actually has a lot of light in it, even though it's very sad, because there was light in my life even after that. There was, play, there was reading, there was things that I loved. So in order to write the truth, you sort of have to include the light with the dark, or shine a light so that there is some glimmer of hope, because there always is.
Yeah, and in Danny's darkest moments in this novel, it's true transcendence. But it's just
Find it interesting that you brought up that part of the book specifically about the Bush Gore election, because I was then a young senior assistant attorney general, with Bob Butterworth.
Oh, in Florida.
Attorney General,
yeah.
the hanging chads, and,
wow.
And of course, General Butterworth sued Jeb Bush.
That's right.
because
That's right.
Bush's son, right? Yeah, son.
Brother.
Okay,
Yeah.
brother. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got it right the first
Jeb.
time. Jeb was the governor
Yeah.
of Florida, and of course, the big battle that ended up going to the U.S. Supreme Court was, whether or not to count the votes, and there was protests all across the country saying count the votes. And the Attorney General's office, Florida Attorney General's office position was that the votes should be counted. And it was just, I'll never forget all of that ultimately I understood Al Gore's, what he was saying, but at the same time was upset because Al Gore's feeling was that he was going to be the statesman, which we no longer have statesmen, stateswomen, thanks to Trump in this country. But he was going to be that and say that rather than keep the division going, he was going to back off. And and of course, we all said, well, yeah, we understand that you backed off, but then look what we got, and look what we now have, as you so beautifully said. So it was just interesting that you would mention that that event, because this whole week seems to be things about Florida. Tonight, and last night, American Scare with Senator Johns and the Johns Committee, rooting out queers and black people. And then Saturday, a former judge, Mark Mushkin, with his great new book, Boy with Wings, Tallahassee judge, and lawyer coming. So it's like all Florida week. It's interesting. But I remember, so when I was reading the book, I remember vividly, what was going on back then with all of that. And of course, the threats that were happening, the death threats that the Attorney General received and others because they were daring to,
Well, just think about people, sorry, there you go. People arguing, people like just so intent on winning that they were arguing not to count obvious votes, like where the Chad was hanging. Like, of course that was a vote. Like, and plus the Pat Buchanan butterfly ballot where Buchanan was listed next to Gore. So people inadvertently voted for Buchanan who wanted to vote for Gore. It just was, common sense was suddenly out the window, and then Sandra Day O'Connor betrayed us all. But it just, I think that's the point at which we became like more intent on winning than on having a democracy, like, fair voting methods. And now it's so corrupt, we can't trust our own elections. And that's never been the case in my lifetime. We now can't trust our own election. And that's just a third world country.
You remember too, and I'm just, because I've had one of these weeks, but so I'm just blank at the moment. But you remember there was a third-party candidate who I used to like. I'm not.
Rossborough,
Ralph Nader, and I will never forget on Nightline where Ted Koppel, had him on, Ralph Nader, and ultimately they're going back and forth about the role that Ralph Nader was playing in close states like Florida, and Koppel was saying, well, you agree on all of these issues in terms of he and Al Gore and the Democratic, And, you know, and the polls are pretty clear that it looks like you're going to be a spoiler in Florida, and that could very well hand the election to Bush. And he said, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I understand that, but I'm not getting out. And even though there was no chance that their party was going to win, and no chance, and they weren't even being successful fielding candidates across the country, because it is very difficult. That's what sucks, that we only have two parties. They're both establishment parties, and we don't have many choices here. Let's be clear about that. But it's like, I just looked at that, and I had supported him and his organizations for so many years as a young person and as an adult. And after that, I was like a lot of people, I'm done with you, Nader. And it's like, I mean, so that was just, and then look what we've got, and here we are now. So it was just, that was quite the election, wasn't it? That
we really had a choice between saving the globe, right? That was Gore's thing, like save the earth, and helping out the rich. And that was that's the beginning of it. That's when it started really accelerating.
I want that alternate universe.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it wasn't easy for anybody, like those issues, because Gore's family had their own things. Just remember, Tipper Gore, was big on trying to suppress music lyrics, and she was out involved with that. And I remember I even wrote something, a law journal article way back so I was in law school when Tipper Gore was doing that. So it's like, that's fine. But I mean, there are no perfect politicians or issues, and we are not perfect as humans. But I just remember it's such a consequential election, and I love that it came up there. But anyway.
I've got a question for Tess. I'm curious. Sorry, can we get back to the book?
Well, that's what we're talking about. This is in the book. If you read the book,
that was quite
all right, you can ask your question. Go ahead.
No, I'm just curious. You say that the character in Dawnland is April.
Yes.
And you wrote a book, April and Oliver. Is it this? So I'm curious, because you said the character is really what drives you. Did you feel in finishing your first book that you weren't done with that character? Or tell me about the transition from that book, from the first book to this. What you wanted to why you wanted to follow this character even more.
Well, I did feel like I was done with her at the time, even though many readers felt like the ending was too open-ended for their taste. But I felt a sense of completeness with that book. And then I went on and wrote another manuscript that went into a drawer. And then it kind of came, years later, the characters came back to me. I had aged and so had they. There's a big time,
There's a time difference between
15-year time difference between the two books. And then suddenly I became interested in them again. And she kind of knocked on my door.
Wow.
It's like, yoo-hoo, I'm not done with you.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, when I opened the book, I thought, like, there's a married woman with a son. I think that's the opening. And I was like, oh, it's April, and she's all grown up, and she has a kid. Like, it's really like seeing an old friend. I'm glad she did it. I was asking her in the car if there's a third, and she's like, no. That's it for April.
She's done.
Yeah.
Are you both working on another book at the moment?
Yes.
I am. Yeah, I'm working on a book about my family in Italy. My mom's Italian, and they're all still there. And I spent a week there when I was young, when there were earthquakes there, and it kind of unearthed a lot of drama in my family. So I'm writing about that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
I'm writing a novel set in China during the period of the Tiananmen protests, where we lived before and after the Tiananmen demonstrations. So, almost done.
That's great.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I know
thank
you
you
have
so
dinner
much.
reservations, so. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.